worked with Mr. Bozeman at Shaw High School in East Cleveland, and at the time I was an English teacher working on becoming a principal, and he was the principal of the high school. So basically, he kind of taught me some things, showed me the ropes. So how am I doing? Am I doing okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess we can give him some credit for that. So I see him periodically, from time to time, at different places, sometimes at church functions or, different events. And one morning, I had just awakened. I kind of sleep with the TV on. So I hear this voice, and I was like, oh my God, am I in Shaw High School right now? I hear Mr. Bozeman. So I'm looking around, and I look at the TV, and there Mr. Bozeman is on the TV about a month ago being interviewed. And he's telling this story about how he was with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and how he had spent some time with him and with his family. And I sat up in the bed and I'm like, what? He never told me all of this. I spent this time with this gentleman, and he was supposed to share tell me all about his world, and he hadn't shared that with me. So then I had to go on a search for his phone number. So I'm like, you have to come and share that with our kids. So he agreed. I'm probably going to pay for it later. I'm going to owe him some huge favor. But I think his story is amazing, and I wanted him to come and share that with me. So I'm so glad that you were able to come on up. All right?
Thank you, Ms. Crawford. Thank you very much. See if I can get back here. I'm a plus, so I might knock it down. Good morning. Wait a minute now. Listen. I know it's so much.
Afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Come on, do better than that.
Good afternoon.
All right, now you make me feel warm and comfortable. I'm very happy to be here with you today. You are the second group that I've been with as far as the elementary schools are concerned this week. I was telling Ms. Crawford, and I thank her so much for those kind and generous remarks, but you're going to have to put them all in a separate container, because most of it is not what some of it. But anyway, she has always been under my tutelage, and she has done a magnificent job. She's a wonderful person, and as she said, we do see each other from time to time. But more than that, young people, one of the things that I would like to share, and as I was about to say, you're the second group I've had as far as elementary students concerned. Now, I'm not going to start up here and do a lot of talking. And I want you to ask questions, because that's the best way to learn. But I do just want to give you a few facts. When I was in college, I was asked to drive Dr. King and work for his church. His church was the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church in Montgomery, Alabama. And I was interviewed by Dr. King. I went to his house one Sunday morning, and I rang the doorbell. And he came to the door. And I told him why I was there. And he invited me in. So I sat down on a small settee, little chair, and it was adjacent to Mrs. King's piano. So he began to ask me questions about my driving record. Was I a good guy? And I said yes. He asked me, did I have a clean driving record? And I said yes. And so eventually he hired me that morning. So he told me what he wanted me to do. He wanted me to be respectful. He wanted me to be a gentleman at all times. And when I pick up my passengers, to do likewise. So that first morning after he hired me, I took his two children, Martin and Miranda, to Sunday school. And from that day on, I began to pick up passages in the Montgomery area and then at the college where I was going. So I had to pick up college students and take them to church. So eventually, he asked me if I would drive him around on Sunday afternoon if he had speaking engagements, if he had to speak somewhere after church. And I said, sure. So I began to drive Dr. King around in different small towns in Alabama, on the weekend especially. And we talked a lot. We talked about education, we talked about religion, and we talked about the civil rights movement. We talked about a lot of things. Then I drove Mrs. King to her hometown several times, and I talked to her. We had several long conversations. Mrs. King was telling me once about how her house was bombed and what she was doing. She had a friend of hers, which was an elementary school teacher, was sitting in the room where Dr. King had interviewed me, and she said she heard a very strange sound like that hit her front porch. And she and Mrs. Williams, the lady who was her friend that night, who was sitting with her, ran to the back of the house. Boom! The bomb went off exactly where they were. And she told me about the time when her father also was working at the sawmill. When they found out that her father and Dr. King was son-in-law, and they burned the sawmill down. Let me just stop you a minute and just tell you something. As you grow older, I want you to always do what is right. I believe, and I'm an old man now, but I believe that there's right and there's wrong. There's very little gray area in between, boys and girls. I don't want you to grow up and always do the wrong thing. I don't want you to grow up and be persuaded by your friends to do wrong. I want you to always do what your parents say, and I want you to always do what your teachers say. Simply because as you grow older, you're going to see how wonderful those two work together to make you what you are. So on this day, I want you to promise me, promise your teachers and your parents that you're going to continue to do right and you're going to study hard. Dr. King loved education. He went to high school in Atlanta. And as he grew older and he began to champion, or he began to hit all of the civil rights movement, he ran into a lot of problems. He was arrested over 29 times. He made over 400 speeches in his lifetime. He wrote 4 books, and he wrote many essays. Essays are like little term papers. They don't use term papers. Okay. But in your writing class, the teacher might ask you to write something. Okay. So he was strong on education. He was strong on right and wrong. So I had a chance to just sit and talk with him many times. And at the end of the day, when we would get back, after I would have taken him to certain trips in and around Alabama, he would give me 10, maybe 15 bucks to drive him around that day. On the occasions that I took Mrs. King on trips, she would give me $20. That was big time. But when I was driving for the church, for Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, they only paid me $6 a Sunday. That's really good. So on some occasion, and then I'm going to stop talking in a minute, when I was unable to get back to the lunchroom at college, I would go by the church and pick him up, and then we would all have dinner at his house. Because he only lived about 6 blocks from my college, from our university. So I would go by the house, and the whole family and all of us would eat along with his housekeeper, and then he would take me back to campus. Last thing, he didn't like pound cake. How many of you like pound cake? Well, he didn't. And he and I made a secret pact. He said he would give me his pound cakes if I wouldn't tell anybody, because he didn't want the ladies of the church to know that they didn't appreciate his pound cake. So he'd give them to me, and I would take it back and sell it 10 cents a slice at the dormitory. And for years, sometimes I had 3 or 4 pound cakes in my dorm room. But overall, he tried to do what's right. And overall, I want you to do the same. Now, I got a couple of pictures here, and I want to explain, and then just a few of them, and then you and I can ask questions together. I am forgot, I'm coming back. And then maybe before you leave, you can come up and get a better view on it. First, this is this picture is with me when I had hair at the time. That's me. But I was talking to Mrs. King at a function in New York City, and she was about to get ready to speak, and she said, hold it just a minute. She said, is that you, Mr. Bozeman, in the back? And I said, yes, ma'am. So she came and called me up, and we had a long conversation. And I was very sad when she passed away. Here, and I'm going to pass this around, this is a book about Dr. King's family and what all he did. Now, I'm going to, can you come up closer, please, and then we'll talk about some of these pictures, and then you all can ask me questions, okay? All right? Okay, I got it out. Hold it. I know you all say this. You don't mind, do you? All right. This, I don't know. This is, okay. This is Dr. King's house in Montgomery. This is where I went to when he first hired me. This is his house in Montgomery. It was owned by the church. It's called Dexter Avenue Baptist Church. This, I know you don't know what this is, not an SUV, but this is a station wagon. You get it? You know? All right. Oh, yeah, this is a station wagon. And this is what I was driving people around to pick up my passengers. And this is, Dr. King would always sit up here with me on the front seat. Okay? So we would drive around. This is where we rode it. This is a picture of him at the end of the Selma March. Most of you heard about Selma, right? Okay, good. And this is a picture. I want you to look at his eyes. You see how tired he looked? Yeah, he had a lot of stress on him. For 7 years, he worked in the civil rights movement. And this is one time that he was arrested. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is the Selma March, as he was almost ending the Selma March. This is when he spoke to almost 250,000 people with his I Have a Dream speech in D.C., in Washington, D.C. Okay? Now, eventually, Dr. King left Montgomery. He went to Atlanta. Anybody know where Atlanta is?
Yeah.
Where? Georgia. Yes! All right. This is his church that he went to. It's called the Ebenezer Baptist Church. Okay? And, This is his funeral. This is the coffin that he was placed in. But, got a wagon here somewhere. Oh, they placed this coffin, boys and girls, into this wagon. They did not have a hearse, you know, like you see every day. The reason they put his coffin in the hearse was they wanted him to symbolize, to be like a poor person, that he was a very common person. And he didn't like a lot of richness and money and all of that. He was focused. So they put his coffin here on this wagon. And the next time I come back, I'll tell you the history of this wagon and how they stole it. I mean, how they got it. They did steal it. But anyway. They did. You're laughing, but they sent Jose Williams, very quick, a guy, to find the mule. He couldn't find it, but he did see a wagon on the side of the road. So he hooked the wagon up to a truck, pulled it in, and then he went and found 2 horses to pull it. And to this day, they don't know who wagon that was. That's true. Okay. When Dr. King was shot on April the 4th, he was shot and he was killed. He was standing at the motel. This is the motel where he was standing. It's called the Lorraine Motel. And right here, I'm standing near a plaque that represents where he was shot. Right here. That's me. That's the handsome face of me. And this is a part of his funeral, ladies and gentlemen. Right here, as he was being pushed in the wagon. This is me. This man, his name is Reverend Robert Grates, G-A-R-E-T. I met him in Montgomery about a year ago, and he and I sat. He was the first white guy to support Dr. King in his bus boycott. And his house was bombed, his church was bombed, and everything. And he and I and his wife Janet talked for hours, and he sent me, I had this picture made. I got a book written by him that he autographed for me. This is a replica of Dr. King in jail in Birmingham when he wrote the letter to the Birmingham, the letter to the clergymen or the preachers in Birmingham. That's a replica of him in jail. He went to jail 29 times over his whole career. And this is a statue in the museum in Atlanta right here of a man who is walking in the Selma to Montgomery Park. These are, excuse me. Okay. Now, these are also in the museum here. These are classrooms, and they represent another bad part of history. This is a monument of his grave in Atlanta, right here. And this is the same monument, boys and girls. This is also his famous statue in Washington, D.C. And this is the room in the motel where Dr. King was killed. This is the Lorraine Motel, room 306. If you were to go there now, and when you do go, I want all of you to go one day, you will see that the bed is still unlaid like he got out of it that morning. And everything is still exactly the same. And then these two are also statues in the museum right here, and they represent people who walked on the in the Selma March. Okay? Now, finally, this is a sign that says where the church was is historical in nature. That means that it's a historical monument. It can never be torn down because they think so much of it that they're going to forever keep it. Okay? All right, I'm ready for questions. And you better ask me. Yes, ma'am.
Were you and Martin Luther King like friends?
Good question. We were not friends like every day we talked on the phone, but we were acquaintances. And that is that I saw him mostly on weekends because I had to go to class. And when I would see him on Saturdays or Sundays if he needed me. But we just didn't buddy every day because he was going all over the world. Yes, I'm going to get to you.
How long?
2 years. 2 years. Yes, sir.
Have you ever walked with them intentionally against
Do I?
you ever walked with them?
Yes, I did. But I didn't walk in Selma with him.
Yeah.
We did some things in Montgomery where when I was a young college student, I walked with him, and he had a close friend by the name of Reverend Ralph. I don't have a picture of Ralph after that. Oh, there he is. This is his closest friend. And I knew him very well. He was his friend for 14 years before he and another preacher was in the room when Dr. King was assassinated. Let me get him and then I get you, okay? Yes.
Why did you get arrested?
Because at that time we had laws that says black folk had to go in certain entrances. They couldn't go in the same doors. They couldn't use the same car. They couldn't drink at the same fountain. They couldn't use the restroom. Everything was separate. He said that's wrong. So he began to bring together people who would say, let's do away with these segregated laws. And that is the reason. Yes.
Do you know how many teachers he was?
400 over his whole lifetime. And that is when he was started preaching. Well, he made a speech when he was a student at Morehouse, but very quickly, I'm going to get to you in a minute. Very quickly, when he first was to go to Dexter, that's the church in Montgomery, he was interviewed for another job in Chattanooga, Tennessee. But they said, well, this guy's pretty good, but he's only 26, and that's just too young to be a preacher. So on his way home, he called his dad. He said, Daddy, said, I was interviewed for this in Chattanooga, and they said I was too, you leaving me? He said I was too young for him to be a preacher. Dad said, wait a minute. So there's another church around here that needs a pastor. So that's how he got in there. And that's another story. Okay? Yes.
Why did he get shot?
Ooh. There was a man that was an opening in another rooming house in front of the Lorraine Motel. It was a rooming house that took in transit. Now, how can I decide?
Write that down.
Huh? Give me a...
Transient, so like people just passing through?
Yeah, people just passing through, and they need a place to sleep. So this guy named James Earl Ray, he shot Dr. King because he didn't like the things that he was trying to change, not only in the South, but in the world. So that's why he was shot through the jaw, and the bullet went down his neck, and then it exploded in his back. And is that my car? I shouldn't. Okay.
How did you meet him?
When I first went to college, I would go to his church and hear him preach. And eventually, the dean at my school sent for me and said, I have a letter here, and they need a driver to pick up kids, pick up college kids, people in the community. And he asked me, he didn't ask me, he told me to take the job. So that's how I did it. And then I went up to his house, and we started talking. Okay? Yes. Yes. Yes.
Did they ever testify shot
Yeah. Very interestingly, he went, you know what he did? He went to, he went out of Memphis in a Mustang, and he went to the airport in Atlanta, caught a plane, he went to London, He left London and went to Portugal. He came back. He was going to South Africa, but they did catch him when he came back to London. And eventually, Mrs. King and all of her kids visited this man who had shot him in prison. And they asked him, said, "Did you shoot my daddy?" What do you think he said?
No.
No. He said no. That's right. Okay? And said what?
I said that's what all people do.
What'd you say?
That's what all people do. They get caught.
Yeah, you're right. You're so right. Okay. Who else? Oh, yeah. It was awful because bathrooms for African Americans was not as clean and noble, for the lack of a better term, than the whites. So it was everything that we did. We couldn't go to school with white kids. We couldn't swim with white kids. We couldn't play. We couldn't do anything together. So he began to change that. That's why I'm so happy to see all of you working together for the good of mankind. It was awesome. And you'll be here next year, right? Okay. I'll have Miss Crawford if she let me come back. Yes.
How old was Martin Luther King Jr. when he died?
30, 31, 32. Am I correct? Yeah. Because we stopped, when I started working for him, I was 21 and he was 26. So he went to Atlanta at 7. About 36. I have to look up 39. I have to look at, yes.
Where were you when Dr. King passed?
I was teaching at Empire Junior High School. I had moved here and I was coming home one night and I heard it on the radio. And I just pulled over and I just cried like a baby. And I just cried so profusely because I knew him. And I was just wondering what somebody would do with him. Any other? Isabella? Go ahead, who's up? Okay. Yes.
In the movie Selma, we learn a little bit about what it was like for Mrs. King to be the mother of children in a family that was being threatened with such a high-profile husband. Did she ever talk to you about any of that?
Once she was quite nervous sometimes. But Dr. King talks about that on August 27, 1967. He did a sermon where he got a phone call one night at 12 o'clock. And this phone call man told him that he was going to bomb his house. If he didn't quit, he was going to shoot his wife and kill his family. But Dr. King got scared. And he got up and he said he began to pray out loud because he had no other recourse. And finally, there's a voice that says, you got to stay where you go. You got to do what's right. You got to do what's just. And you got to do, because this is what I call you for. If you remember, I just talked about the house being bombed. Since he did not leave, that was the result of him not leaving, was the bombing that she told me about. Yeah, and it was tense all the time. Yes.
Did Mrs. King die before Dr.
No, she died after. Yes, sir. Was she ever what? Good question. I don't think so. I don't think so. But she did go down and bail him out of jail a couple of times in Montgomery. But I don't think she was ever arrested. I'm going to look that up. I don't think so. Yes, sir.
How many monuments did they make of Dr. King?
The last I read, they have about 106 monuments throughout this country. And I'm talking about streets, buildings, schools, and everything else that you can name. About 106. I'm at the offer. Yes, sir. because he was out front all the time. He was the person who was out front. And he was taking responsibility for his actions. You see, Mrs. King, and that was another group of women ladies called the Political Action Committee. So she helped with the women's side. One of my professors in college was also a part of that group. And she did a lot of work with Mrs. King. Her name was Mrs. Joanne Robinson. And she was a marvelous person. So she worked with her. Yes.
Did any white people join Martin Luther King as well?
Yes, absolutely. Reverend Grady. There was another white couple named Durr, D-U-R-R. And he was an attorney. And Virginia, was a pharmacist. Her dad and her family owned a big pharmaceutical company. So they moved to Montgomery. So when Dr. King got in jail, Clifford Durr would always go down and bail him out. Yes. And there were a number of people supported, but not that many in Montgomery because they were afraid. They were afraid of what their neighbors would say. And but some did. And those who did, like Reverend Grace, he paid a price for it. He bought this house, bought this church. They did a lot of stuff. Yes.
Do you know the longest time Dr. King was in jail for?
I'm going to give you a guess. I think that once he was in jail for about 2 weeks. He was arrested in Georgia once, in Albany. And they were going to pay his bail there. Well, give me, Mr. Crawford, what is bail? When you pay?
Well, when you get out of jail,
Okay.
you have to pay some money to get out of jail,
Well,
but
he
you still
didn't
have to
want
go
to get
to
out.
court.
He didn't want to get out. He said, I'm here for a call. But at that time, Attorney General Robert Kennedy called him, called the judges and let him out. And that's how he got out. I think about 2 weeks. Good question. Yes. Wait a minute. I got to get this.
How many people participated in the march?
Which one? The one in Washington here was about 250,000 people. And yeah. This is the one we're talking about, right? Okay. Yeah. I don't think she paid any money because somebody always put up the money for her. She didn't pay anything out of her personal, but somebody, some of his lawyers. He had a friend of mine who was a lawyer in Alabama named Fred Gregg. Fred was his Dr. King's lawyer, and Fred went to Case Western Reserve University Law School. So he was his lawyer for many years. They would arrest him, boys and girls, on trumped up charges. Once Dr. King was riding from Albany, Georgia to Atlanta, the state troopers stopped him and arrested him for a ticket he got in high school. They cuffed him and took him to Montgomery they took him to Montgomery in the back of Carolina prison. And one time, oh yeah. Once, this is true. We were in a meeting at a church. We had what we call mass meetings, and all of the people would come together. And the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service, had indicted Dr. King for tax evasion. And the state of Alabama had indicted him for tax evasion. So one night we were in this big meeting, and suddenly it stopped. All of these white troopers came in to arrest him for and he had two lawyers, one named Robert Means from Chicago, and they wouldn't have let him arrest him. Eventually, they did have his trial. And guess what? They found out, the IRS found out that they owed him in the state of Alabama. But that's just a form of harassment. Yes, sir.
Why were so many white enslaved before they had
It has to do with what we call culture, what you grew up with. If you grew up in a society that says everything is mine and not yours, when it comes time to share, then I don't want to share. And I will not share anything that I have received. So that's why a lot of whites said, no, I'm not going to do it. But one of the things that we have learned is that when you get to know somebody other than the color of their skin, you have found a friend forever. So you judge people based on what they think in their heart more than in their mind, than what their color says.
Okay,
I have one last question.
Yes.
one question.
And then we'll wrap things up. I would like to hear what you think we could all do to honor Dr. King's work and to keep his memory alive.
First of all, during his birth month in January, that's when we have all of this rigmarole about his. But I would like for a continuous expose of what his writings are about, his life, and most of all, what his legacy is, what he stood for. Many of them, I go all over the country. I do 12 to 15 speeches a year. And I've gone from the University of California to Kent State. Most of the people only know I have a dream. And I think it's important to know what is beyond I have a dream. You need to know the things that he went through, that for him to stand up for what he believed right. And that's what I think that my kids and the community ought to know. The second thing that you can do is to always have something that you can sit and talk to each other on a basis other than professional. When I was at a school at Nathan Hale, I talked to, we used to have parties every teachers, and we would sit and talk to each other, and I learned more about how they thought, how they was thinking, and they learned more about me. And that's what I want boys and girls to mingle and talk to each other. Don't be afraid to talk about race. Race is here to stay. America has canonized race. It has gospelized race. So we got to deal with it. But because I'm black does not make me a bad guy. Because you're white does not make you a bad guy. You're a good guy. So, very quickly, how much time I got? I gotta go?
Yeah, they got
Oh, man.
So,
Take a picture.
yeah, we want a picture with you and the kids, and then we
Okay.
got a little snack for them before they
Thank
leave.
you so much, baby, for holding my phone. Okay? All right. Let me.
All right. Guys on the end of the big push in. Go in.
You guys, listen, before you go, listen. Hey, before you go, let me tell you, you are a great bunch of kids. I have enjoyed this immensely. You are really, really great. And I want you to stay that way, okay? All right, I'll be back next year. And how many? Oh, man.
Come back this year. All right, everybody look over here, you guys. Students, look over here.
I did Garfield there.
Over here, guys.
Our middle school here.
Oh, okay, well, get me over. All right.
Okay, you guys, Jason and, yeah, there you go. Oh, perfect. Okay, everybody look over here.
Come
One,
on.
two. Okay, no, you guys smile. This was fun. This looked like it was fun. All right. What are we calling Mr. Bozeman?